I've tried once, twice. We're working with a client who tried and failed to hire this person 3 times before they started working with us. And when we look at that, it's almost always because they started with this overly generic definition of what they think an operator looks like or what this person should be able to bring in. And then they went out to the job market not actually knowing what they're looking for, so they didn't find it.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to happy clients.
Remember when running an agency meant solving exciting problems, crafting killer strategies, and building meaningful relationships with clients? And now it feels like chasing emails, double-checking deadlines, and micromanaging the details. Let Copper CRM bring the spark back. Built for Google Workspace, Copper helps digital agencies automate follow-ups, manage leads effortlessly, and keep client conversations crystal clear without the overwhelm. Stay organized and win your time back, and start loving your work again. Try it for free for 14 days at copper.com/happyclients and use Happy Clients for 15% off of an annual plan while limited time only. Well, I'm so excited to have Jhana here on the podcast today. Her and I have been friends for a while, I want to say, like years, especially because our roles, I think, are so distinctly different, but also a huge overlap. But yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. We're just going to get to like nerd out, jam. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. So talk to me a little bit about that director of operations or COO role. What title do you use the most?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on the company's size, but generally we're seeing like head of operations or director of operations as being like that key second in command operator role that most agencies are looking to bring in right now.
Okay, cool. So what does a typical day in the life look like? Like, let's say I'm an agency and I'm growing and I'm scaling, and I know that my skill set is not operations. Like, most agency owners probably listening. And let's say I'm thinking about bringing in this second in command.
Yeah.
What does the typical like day in the life look like? What are they
Yeah.
even doing?
So this is such a good question. We hear it all the time from our clients. And so I'll start with like, how should I as a founder be thinking about operations and why it's going to bring and how it's going to bring value to my business? And then we can talk about like kind of what that looks like for most agencies that we work with.
Love.
So the way I describe operations, right, is think about your business as a bucket. And sales and marketing is the water pipe that is bringing water into your bucket. That's money, that's revenue entering the business, the bucket. Every single bucket has cracks and gaps and holes, every single bucket. And the bigger that bucket becomes, the bigger the gaps become, the bigger the cracks. The job of operations fundamentally is to find the cracks and close them, right? Keep all of the water that you're working so hard to pipe into this bucket, actually keep it in the bucket. And what that does really, like what that looks like in your business is profit, right? It's the difference between the amount of money that you bring in and the amount of money that leaks out. And if operations can focus on making sure that your time, your energy, your money is not leaking out of the bucket, then all of that profit gets to stay in the business and you actually get to take it off the table, as opposed to what we often see, which is due to operational gaps and inefficiencies, so much of the profit that could be made by that business is actually just leaking out the sides. And most times founders don't even know or realize how much profit is actually leaking out. So that's the job of the operator, right? Find the cracks, close them. In terms of what that looks like tactically day to day, that can look like a lot of things because the gaps exist all the way across the business, start to end. And so it's really the operational lens to be able to identify where that leakage is and then have the right solution to do something about it.
I love that analogy. It's such a visual. I'm like picturing the cracks.
Leaky bucket. Yep.
Yeah, I can picture it. So, what would be something that second in command or a COO or operations lead would be responsible for versus a CEO? And we're talking agencies, right? Because agency owners are usually like, "Oh, I'm both of those hats for
Yes.
a very long time." So, what would stay on the CEO's plate
Yeah.
And then what would be transitioned over to COO?
Yeah. So most founder CEOs I know are really genius at being visionaries, right? Like coming up with a strategic vision for the business, as well as growth and revenue generation. So marketing, sales, new products, new offers, and new marketing and sales strategies that are going to drive that next wave of growth into the bucket, right? So those are the things that traditionally will stay with the CEO. The operator's job then becomes more day-to-day execution, right? So that can look like day-to-day team management and making sure that people, number one, that people have KPIs, and then
Hmm.
also making sure that people are hitting their KPIs, right? The team is performing as well as possible. It's all the systems and the technical infrastructure. These days, it's AI and making sure that the team is utilizing AI to be as productive and efficient as possible. So there's essentially like 6 core pillars to operations that we assign to the operator. There's strategy, leadership, team, communication, systems, and data. Anything in those 6 categories, I would put under operations. And the operator's job is to make sure that those things, again, are running as efficiently as possible and keeping as much water in the bucket as possible within that category.
Gotcha. So is the vision for a CEO listening that they don't have to manage people, they don't have to hire, they don't have to talk about systems or like KPIs ever again?
Yeah, pretty much. We had a client that I think described it so perfectly. Like before we started working together, she was the one that her team would come to for everything. She was the one making every decision, assigning every task, moving everything forward. After about 6 months, when we checked back in, she told me like, Jhana, my org chart now looks like me at the top, then my COO, then everyone else, right?
Great.
I only have to manage one person, and that's my second in command, and then like my executive assistant. And my COO is now running everything else across the day-to-day of my business.
That is the dream.
That's the dream.
Like the CEO should not be managing people because I am also one of these people and managing people is not my jam.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's the goal.
that's the goal. And it really comes down to the founder, right? Some founders like myself, I really love managing people. So I still manage my core leadership team. I haven't handed that off to my operator. But for so many clients that we work with, they've never learned to lead a team. It really like is an energy drain for them to have to show up on those daily team huddles or check-in calls or departments or whatever. And so that really comes down to the founder, right? Like I think of the CEO and COO as like a yin and a yang. The CEO founder is already half of that puzzle, and they are their own unique random combination of like idiosyncrasies and skills. So the job of like for us when we're recruiting or when you're looking for the right COO is like you need to find the perfect complement to that CEO whose skills and like strengths match the CEO's weaknesses. And the things that they're great at taking in the business are the things that the CEO wants to hand off. So there's no like quote unquote perfect COO. There's no standard template for what a CEO does or what they look like. It's actually around finding the right complement to the CEO of that unique business.
Yeah. So with that in mind, how do you find that perfect COO? Because I know for me, my husband is my COO. That's very
Yep.
unique situation. But then I know other agency owners where they have somebody who is quite literally the complete opposite of them
Mhm.
and came from a completely different background. But like, how do you recruit somebody? Like, how do you do that?
Yes. So we have an entire recruitment team that we have built to do this, right? And we have a proven process that we work with in our clients to make sure that we're getting that right person in every single time. The long and short of it, Taylor, is that like the very first thing, the very first piece of advice I could offer anyone looking to place for this role is that you have to start with a super, super clear definition of what this operator looks like. And that goes beyond just like, job title, compensation, and they need to have high attention to detail, right? Like, what are
Mm.
the specific skills and competencies that this person brings? What experience do they bring to the role? What communication style is going to make them work best with that CEO founder? Do they thrive under having a really attentive, kind of micromanagey type of management style, or do they need full autonomy because the CEO only wants to have to talk to them once a week, right? Again, like we actually really start with the CEO and say, what's weird and unique about this person? And then how do we reverse engineer the perfect complement in the form of a COO? And until you have absolute clarity on like what that profile looks like and what this person needs to bring to the table, what we see often with our clients who are saying, hey, why should we work with you to hire an operator? I've tried once, twice. We're working with a client who tried and failed to hire this person 3 times before they started working with us. And when we look at that, it's almost always because they started with this overly generic definition of what they think an operator looks like or what this person should be able to bring in. And then they went out to the job market not actually knowing what they're looking for, so they didn't find it.
Yeah, that's so important. What about timing? Like, when does it make sense to bring somebody in for this role? And I'm selfishly thinking about my own business and I'm like, wow, I should have done this so much earlier.
Yep. Yeah, that's almost
You know,
always the right answer.
so
Like
like,
earlier than you think.
yeah, what advice do you have for agency owners thinking about this?
Yeah. So I think this is where we come back to job title, right? There's actually like 3 levels to an operator for an agency or a startup. You've got your ops manager, that's like entry level day-to-day operations. I think it is not too early for you to start thinking about hiring that person in the agency space when you're doing between 50 to 75K months, right? Like if you really want to get to 7 figures and beyond as quickly and efficiently as possible, you should be bringing in operations sooner because number one, it's going to allow you to grow more profitably by closing the cracks earlier on. And number two, it's going to allow you to grow faster because that is going to free up your time as a founder so you can spend more and more time on sales and marketing and growth. Most of our clients do not do that, right? Most of our clients wait until they're in the 150 to 300K per month range. And by that size, we need to bring in a more advanced operator, which is that head of ops or director of ops level higher. This person has a few years experience. They're great at team leadership, etc. And then when you get into that like 300 to 500K range, we'll start to look at a COO, like a proper COO. But the good news for most people listening is like, I know a lot of 75K agencies that come to me and say, hey, I'm ready for my COO. And I'm like, great news. No, you're not. And we can save you 100K in salary that you don't have to pay out for a really advanced, expensive person. Because actually, like a 60K a year ops manager is going to be just fine for you and get you to that next stage of growth. So I think a lot of people wait because in their mind, operations means COO, and I'm not ready or I can't afford somebody with a C-suite title. That's not a reason to wait on this hire. Just start by hiring an ops manager instead of the full-blown COO.
Okay. So if you're listening and you don't like managing people and you don't like, systems and processes, that is when you need
Pretty
you
much.
need operations support. Is there
Yep.
anything else that are flags for, let's say, an agency owner thinking about like, is it finance? Does operations help with finance? Do they help with HR? Like, what are some of the other buckets that maybe fall within their scope?
Yeah. So again, like in startup land, we all wear so many hats, right? So for most of the agencies we work with, their operator is going to be responsible for HR. So that's all things hiring, firing, management, legal. They'll generally work with a legal team to get all the contracts cleaned up and straightened out. Finance, again, they'll be the one managing the bookkeeper. They'll be the one going out and finding the fractional CFO, right? So your operator doesn't have to be a subject matter expert across all of these things, but they are responsible for finding the right vendors and the right partners that you need to grow in these departments as the company grows. And then again, operations is its whole own thing. What I think is relevant for you and I to have a conversation around, Taylor, is like operations is not client success, right? Those are
Right.
two different departments that we often see agency owners saying, hey, I want a COO that does all of these things, plus handles all my client escalations, works with my most important clients, manages the client success team, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the difference because I think, in most cases, the size agencies that we're working with, they have an operations manager,
Yep,
or unfortunately, a lot of times it's still on the CEO's plate
totally.
when it shouldn't be. But where do you see the distinct line between ops and client success? And where do you see the differences?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to understand this is like, what results are each of those roles responsible for delivering in the business? What outcome, right? The outcome of really good operations is profit. They're responsible for company-wide profitability and efficiency. The outcome for really good client success and ahead of client success is client lifetime value. and client retention, right? So it's just two different areas of focus. There can be a lot of overlap in the day-to-day of what these roles look like, but fundamentally, what's the lever you're trying to move in the business? Are you trying to build the most profitable version of your company, or are you trying to build the best and highest retention client experience?
I love that distinction. So for us, of course, we're talking about client retention, client
Yep.
success.
Yep.
And in our day to day, a lot of the things we're doing are operations-ish, like we
Mhm.
are managing different vendors. We are, jumping on client meetings. We're doing a lot of the strategy, things like that. Um, but then the operations person is a very unique person in the agency as well, and they're both needed. So I really like that distinction. Um, when you're working with a CEO of an agency and they might come to you and say like, okay, I need client success and I need operations and I need finance and HR and da da da. What would you say comes first? And or is it kind of a unique case by case?
Yeah. So a lot of agencies come to us saying, hey, I need a unicorn, right?
Yeah.
I need someone who also is an incredible copywriter, who has 10 years of experience running Facebook ads, but also is great at client success, but also runs, like, loves managing people and runs operations, right? And what I always say is, hey, you know what's easier than and cheaper than finding a unicorn? Finding a horse and a narwhal, right? Like, let's separate out into actual roles and functions what gaps you're trying to fill across the business right now. And then let's figure out the most cost-effective way to close those gaps. So we have hired operators with a background in client success because that's a massive gap inside of that agency. And it's something that they need. And they only have the budget for one leader. Okay, so we're going to go find somebody who has expertise in both, with the understanding that in the next 6 to 12 months, as your company grows and scales, one of those hats is going to be handed off. And so we're going to specialize. Are you looking for a head of client success with a background in ops? Or are you looking for your director of ops, future COO, who has a background in client success and can fill that gap for 6 months, right? But we're
Mhm.
super clear that, like, functionally, we're hiring for two hats in one person, with the game plan that that's going to separate out and become separate hats at scale. And then if the client is just like unreasonable in their expectations of like trying to like slam 4 or 5 hats under one role, that's where we're going to do some coaching with them around like what's realistic and also what's going to allow their company to scale most effectively, because no one is set up for success if they're walking into a role under the expectation that they're going to functionally fill 4 hats and somehow do that all perfectly well.
Honestly, right? Like I love you that you said we're gonna find the horse and a narwhal. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know you need a unicorn, and sure, that makes sense, but like, you can't.
Right. You can't, and also, again, unicorns are expensive. It's not that they don't,
Yes.
they're just expensive. And at scale, you need a horse and a narwhal anyway, because it's a full-time job to be a horse and it's a full-time job to be a narwhal. So it's easier for us to just find these two roles separately from the beginning, because at scale, they're going to be two different people anyway. So we can actually get more cost effective by hiring two specialists as opposed to one unicorn generalist.
I love that distinction. So, agency owners that I speak to often come to us and they think that they want to let go. They're like, I'm ready to hire somebody to manage my clients. I know I can't do this anymore and I need to scale my agency. And I'm sure this happens to you as well. They come to you and they're like, I need an operations person. I'm gonna let it all go. And then they don't.
Yep.
So, how do you coach, an agency owner who may think they're ready, but they're not acting like it?
Yeah. So this is the single hardest problem that we had to figure out how to solve. Because at the beginning, we would just like recruit in these badass operators or coach them up. And then we're like, cool, company solved. You're good to go. And what happened is that as the CEO started to get more and more white space on their calendar and the operators started to take more and more things off their plate, what happened? The CEOs freaked out, jumped back into the day-to-day weeds and started self-sabotaging the business, right? Because it's so fundamentally scary and uncomfortable to hand off your baby to somebody else. So this became such a thing, Taylor, that this year we literally brought in an executive coach who works with our CEOs every other week on the mindset, the identity, the leadership skills that they need to develop in order to feel comfortable handing their business off. Because otherwise, again, you could have the best operator in the world, but if your trust issues mean that you keep overstepping, micromanaging them, or like doing their job for them, what happens is that your all-star operator gets really frustrated and then they quit. And that's not helpful to anybody. So we actually had to start solving this problem from the CEO side as well.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've all done this, right? It's like you get that white space on your calendar and you're like, who am I anymore? Like, am I not needed? And
Yes.
like this big identity shift.
Yep.
So I love that you have somebody to coach the CEO specifically on that one thing because I think we see it as well, on the account management side. They'll get it off their plate. They don't have any client meetings anymore, and then they're like, "But wait, does
Right.
anybody know who I am?" And then
Right.
they
It's
just start
very
jumping back
confronting.
in.
Yeah, it's very confronting.
Yeah. So what do you wish more agency owners really understood about operations and this role and what it can mean for their agency that
Mhm.
maybe we're not talking enough about in the agency space?
So I think it really comes back to the leaky bucket problem, right? Like oversimplifying, but not by much. Operations is the single greatest lever in your business to unlock free profit and free money, right? Because back to our bucket analogy, you've already spent all the money to get that water into the bucket. You've already spent all the marketing costs and the sales commissions. It's expensive to bring revenue in, and you've already worked so hard to get that water in the bucket. It costs you relatively nothing to just keep the water in the bucket, right? And any water currently that is leaking out that you can plug those gaps for free is free profit that gets generated for your business. So the big misconception that I know founders have around operations is an expense. Operations is a cost. It's like a necessary evil that I have to bring in because somebody told me I need SOPs. No, operations is free money. And the sooner you can bring it in, the more of that money you get to take off of the table because you are working so hard to bring the water into the bucket. All operations is doing is letting it not leak out so that you can actually take that money off the table.
Mm, I love it. And I like that you really just tied to profit. That simplifies it, you
That's
know? I love that. Cool. So talk to me about an onboarding process when somebody works with you and your team at um
Spyglass.
let's yeah, I was just trying to think of at scale, but really like let's say I come to you and I'm ready for an operator and I'm nervous. I don't know how this person's going to come in. What does the onboarding process look like? How long should I expect? Just like tell me like how it works.
Whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
tell me the whole thing.
So if you choose to work with us on this, we do so much more than just recruit you an operator. So we really partner with our clients for between 6 to 12 months to do a full operational overhaul. And the way that that starts is with a company-wide ops audit. We call it the ops inspection. It takes a week. And my team of fractional COOs will go into the business and spend a full week auditing systems, interviewing team, getting to know the founder, looking at absolutely everything about the business. And then we build a 12-month operational roadmap so that the founder knows exactly the work that needs to be done. We know exactly the operator that they need to pull it off. And we will interview, if they have somebody in that ops role already, we'll interview them and give the founder our insight on whether we think that operator actually has what it takes to fill the role at scale. If they don't have what it takes, we will also let them know that, right? And so from there, we split into two tracks, which is if they have that person, great, we'll plug them into my COO Academy coaching program. We'll get them trained up over the next 3 to 6 months. If they don't have that person, we'll go into recruitment. And it's a full done for you recruitment service that then also includes like onboarding that person. We'll replace that person if they leave for the length of time that we're working together. We're doing everything that we can to support that person and level them up into the role so that they're set up for success long term.
I like that. Makes it really tangible. It's not just like we're gonna go recruit you someone and then you have to train them up because that wouldn't make any sense.
Right. Because how would a visionary know how to train an operator when that's not
Right.
their skill set? It doesn't make any sense.
No, exactly. And why should they? They shouldn't be bringing all their bad habits, just like an account manager or a client success. Like
Totally.
you should not be training these people.
Yep.
That's awesome. So, how can agency owners learn more about you and your team at Spyglass? Like, where can we learn more?
So, best place, guys, probably to get in touch is through Instagram. And what I love giving away for free to podcast audiences of the people that I like the most, Taylor. So I'll do this is I call it my hidden profit vault, which is where I have a lot of my tools and templates around how to find and reclaim the hidden profit inside your business. So if anyone listening goes to my Instagram and DMs me the code word vault, we will send you that for free.
I love it. We will link her Instagram below, and then also the website if you want to look
Yeah.
around and things like that. But thank you so much for coming on the show. This was super interesting. I learned a lot,
Yeah.
and I've taken a lot of mental notes of what I need to work on when it comes to being a CEO. But yeah, thanks so much again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.